Look at the map. Early's attack on the West Fort. We want to get ourselves oriented, and technically you should turn the map with Early on the ridge behind you. That's Apple Pie Ridge. Nice sweet name for something that wouldn't end up being so sweet. And then behind me, and you're facing West Fort. This ridge out to the roughly the highway, this is West Fort. So as we're coming into this, remember Early has left Ewell back at Bowers Hill, and the place that we stopped was part of his circuitous route around here to the west. At this time, Milroy has no clue to what's happening. At Bowers Hill, there's a lot of activity, but their only responsibility as far as the Confederate forces, despite having a lot of superiority in numbers, was to hold Milroy's attention. Remember, Milroy's up in that basket, a homemade basket that hauls him to the top of this flagpole, and he's seeing all this activity south. And he goes for that hook, line, and sinker. He assumes then that's where the main attack's coming from. And he concentrates all of his attention and forces towards the south. Across the way, you have one regiment, the 110th Ohio, right over here, along the ridge. A little bit further to their right was West Fort, where the artillery would have been, and there was even a smaller redoubt just beyond with 2 guns. So again, Pete talked about having to fight this in sections. There were 4 in West Fort, 2 over in the other battery position. If you look at the map, you can see that every artillery piece icon represents 2 guns. So that may help you understand. So as we're looking at this, Early has established a line of artillery over here. Okay, line of artillery, we kind of flip it. Yeah, that's good. No, you're good. Turn around, I'm sorry. Thank you. Over here, under a captain named Dance. And then over here were 8 pieces under Carrington. Now, if you were with us last week, Carrington was the commander of the Charlottesville Artillery, who was here last week at Cross Keys. Remember the artillery fire that scared the cavalry in Port Royal? Same battery. So they're a bit more experienced now than they were at Cross Keys. But same commander, same batteries were involved here. So basically they've set up to put a flanking fire on West Fort and the artillery. Prior to that, they're coming up over the hill. They've been behind Apple Pie Ridge, and a local captain of the 13th Virginia, Captain William Buck, had been asked to help reconnoiter with Early. And they came out off the top of the ridge, or about the tree line, and Captain Buck was good with that. But Early wanted to get closer. So he ordered the captain to knock a couple rails off the nearby fence so his horse could jump over. The horse was a little reluctant with that and jumped and got a straddle of the fence. And about that time, some guys over here see some movement and say, oh, I wonder what that's all about, and they start shooting. Captain Buck immediately thought better about it, and he heads into the woods. Early finally gets his horse back across the fence, heads back, cursing those damn Yankees all the way into the woods. Not a good way to start, but he's got his temper up, as we say. He has brought an entire brigade of 3 brigades Early has brought, the front one being the Louisiana Brigade. They are going to be the attacking force. They are back in the woods. As he deploys the artillery, they're back in the woods until everybody's set. And then about 4 o'clock, a little later than that, artillery fire is, a signal gun is fired, and 20 guns got loosed on West Fort. And I think you've got some things in there in your handouts But let me just tell you what one of them thought. One of the Ohio troops thought when it happened. He said, we were up in West Fort. He said, here came a shower of shot and shell, and the boys tumbled off the parapets like turtles dropping off a log in the water. So if you have that image, they're kind of sitting up there sunning themselves. They have no idea anything's going to happen. And boom, 20 guns start firing. And they just, you know, hightail it, get over the parapets, and start getting out of the way. So over at Bowers Hill, or actually, you know, keep this in mind, northeast of town. We haven't even been over there yet, but northeast of town, a lieutenant reported seeing the artillery firing vigorously on the forts, and he said, we could see the flash of Early's guns, 16 discharges per minute. So that's the amount of fire that's coming down on West Fort on both sides here. Within 15 minutes, 4 guns have been disabled, and before it's over with, nearly all the horses for the battery are destroyed or killed. Caissons have been blown up. There's one report they were able to pull out 1 caisson out of the 6 guns that were in West Fort. So this goes on for 15 minutes. There was even a report before, at the end of the battle, they talked to some of the Union troops that said, we were convinced you were coming from the south. We had all the guns pointed south. And they had to hand move the artillery pieces to meet this attack and to meet this gunfire. So now it's about 4:30, maybe a little later. Actually, it's a little later, 6:30. And out across these fields, this line right here, the Louisiana Brigade steps out and begins this attack across the valley. Now the valley you see, some of this was wheat field, some of it is apples. Basically it is preserved though that you can see what the land is like. So they march down into this valley. The white house, right, barely see the top of it. That's the Yonley house. So on your map, the Yonley house is noted. So that gives you some sense of the direction of this attack going over to West Fort.
So that's the one with the rectangular roof just over the apple tree line? Or the one on the right?
No, the rectangular roof.
Right.
Which one is it?
Rectangular roof.
I'm sorry, the rectangular.
The one on the left. Yep.
On the left. Of the 2 that you can see, the one on the left. The metal roof shining here. This attack comes across. Again, the Tigers, the Louisiana Brigade probably has 1,800 men. The 101st has about 320. And probably less than that up at this portion of the battlefield, because over here they moved Company C. They were just kind of out here floating, kind of protect this redoubt. But they didn't really get involved with this fight. The fight was West Fort. This part and all along. So the attack goes up. Fire 2 or 3 volleys. The Ohio troops are not well-seasoned troops. They have, for the most part, been guarding railroads. They marched in with Milroy in January, and that has been the extent of their war until they find battle-hardened Louisianans who have been fighting for 3 years, charging and screaming up at them, coming up that hill. It didn't last long. The 110th basically turned around and headed for Star Fort and for Milroy, Fort Milroy, which was the main fort. That's where Milroy is literally up in that basket. He hears all this, of course he turns around, he starts ordering, hey, you guys, let's send more guys to help the 110th. By the time they moved out, this fight was over. So in your map you see that there's 3 regiments that move out towards this position, but they don't get here in time to really save, change the outbreak. So they return to their lines. The Louisianans come up through here, they take the fort. You can also, there's a remark here about what Miss Yonley said as they marched through. I'm sure she wrote that after the war. I doubt she quite thought in those terms while bullets are flying around and dead and wounded men are filling her yard. But they were very excited about the charge, at least post-war when she wrote about it. Dick Ewell over on Bowers Hill has been watching as well. At that time, again, remember trees most of the trees and what have you no longer, or were not growing the way they are now. Ewell is watching. Remember, there's skirmishing over there going on too. Ewell gets hit in the chest with a spent bullet, and Ewell staggers. It never says he goes down, but it certainly knocked him pretty hard. And of course, everyone, oh my gosh, they go check on the general, and he's got just a big bruise on his chest from a spent bullet. Hunter McGuire, who was Stonewall Jackson's physician, now he's the second corps physician, runs over, checks Ewell's out. And remember, Ewell has one leg. He was wounded earlier in the war, had one leg left. He takes the crutches away from Ewell and he says, you know, leave those sticks alone for a while. And Ewell, of course, didn't really agree. And if you know Hunter McGuire, he may have been a bit more emphatic and used a bit more colorful language to tell Ewell to get up, stay down for a little bit. But Ewell was able to recover, and of course he continued to supervise the battle. Just a couple side notes. The colonel that was the commander of the 110th up here, after the war becomes U.S. Speaker of the House.
The name again?
His name was Kiefer, or Kiefer, Warren Kiefer. He ended up Speaker of House, and the other notable is when we got into the Spanish-American War, he's promoted and given the rank of Major General of Volunteers. So he has a post-war military career. Yes, sir.
So the 110th was at Pritchard's Hill.
Yes.
Then they were down at Milltown, or Bowers, down below Bowers Hill.
Right.
Right in the middle of the facing these guys. And now here.
And now here.
Throw 3 times, like there's a 110th.
There's an interesting thing. If you look at your map, to give you an idea of the disparity of forces, all the Union troops on the map are marked with unit numbers. All the Confederate forces are designated by brigade name. What that tells us is the Union forces weren't very big, and we could identify them right down to the regimental level. And we could do that with brigade too, but it just shows you the disparity. Early has about 12,000 men, or excuse me, 6,500 men back behind this hill, ready to come down on this attack. So it was a foregone conclusion. Now, early in the morning, Milroy had sent cavalry out in this direction and reconnoitered, and they didn't find anything. They were just a few hours early. So they report back. So again, Milroy says there's nothing out there. All this activity's coming from the south. I'm going to focus on my defense to the south. This is a complete surprise. The first shot actually from the batteries that signaled the attack actually went over West Fort and went into the town of Winchester, which caused some excitement. But for the rest of this battle, after the 110th gave up the position, Early's troops occupied the heights. They turned some of the couple of guns that were still remaining, tried to fire them after them. But it just turns into kind of a back and forth artillery fire for the rest of the evening. So this is June 14th. We talked about down at Pritchard's, that was the 13th. Your point is well made. Milroy is constantly moving his troops around to meet perceived threats. Why he's up here with them is they've already been in the action a little bit. I'll put them in a quiet sector, you know, and let somebody else take a little bit more of the fighting, and of course they get the brunt of it here. Any questions? Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Is this where the Henry repeating rifle was first used?
There are reports that the Henrys were actually used on the skirmish line by the 110th over at Bowers. Other references never talk about Henrys. I can tell you the 110th received Springfields in April of '63, brand new Springfields. That doesn't mean that there was not maybe a company or skirmishers who had Henrys, but there's, yeah, both ways on that, both ways on that.
Jim,
Yep.
I set her up for that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the interesting thing is, the two books that are written about Second Winchester, written by the same individual, or at least partially written by the same individual, says Henrys were used here for the first time. And then when he talks about this action, all he talks about is the 110th had recently received Springfield rifles.
Yes.
I would assume that had there been Henrys here, someone might have mentioned it. But at this point, we can say both is true.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Who wrote those 2 books on the second one?
Scott Mingus was a gentleman that wrote with Eric Wittenberg a book on the second, and then they also wrote the If We're Going North, the campaign that included this battle. So it depends on which ones read, how in depth they get in, and the information that they provide. Now, who wrote this fight? You know, the book doesn't tell us which one of the co-authors wrote each chapter. So
There is one note too. The ladies that are out here in the Yonley house,
yes,
they'll actually come out and pull some of those wounded soldiers in, and that becomes a field hospital basically.
right. Next site.
Yes.
2 points. Hi, I'm Jack Owens. I'm with the Battlefields Foundation. One fun fact. So the tree line that you see here, where the Confederates, you know, and early troops got to and then stepped out of, and the artillery comes out, as they enter these woods, someone in the Confederate force is, you know, leaning up against a tree, and they find a tacked piece of paper to it. And as they, did you already use this?
No,
or
no, go
You
ahead.
use it, Jim.
No, go ahead, don't.
So they find this tacked piece of paper to the tree. General Miller orders all the timber east of this point to be cleared off. And there was some date on there, I'm sure, and we were way past the date in June of '63. So had someone followed Milroy's orders to clear those trees, then
It'd have been a lot more difficult attack.
Yeah.
They would have been seen a lot sooner.
Yeah, so that's fun. And then the preservation point here, here's my pitch, because all you people showed up today. From that tree line all across these fields, all these apple orchards, all the way to the highway where you see the cars, up around this mowed grass, to that modern road over there, 522, all the way down till that last big pile of dead apple trees is 172 acres the Battlefields Foundation can preserve, and we're working on preserving. So here in the future, when we come on the next tour, if we raise enough money and we work with the landowner, which we are, we'll have parking, we'll have trails, we'll have cannon, interpretive signs, all throughout this property, so we can walk and park and visit, and actually walk the route of the Louisiana troops, walk close up to the Yonley house, walk up to the crest of the rise to West Fort. But for now, we have to stand in a Tractor Supply parking lot because we haven't preserved this yet. So that's our active appeal. That's our most recent project we've mailed to our members. I haven't been able to get an updated number on how much we've raised yet. We've only needed to raise $35,000 to save 172 acres, which is pretty incredible. Property's worth $3.3 million just in easement. So just the development value of this property alone is $3.3 million. And the landowner's working with us, and she only wants $35,000 to get this project done. So that's my preservation pitch today. I couldn't let you leave here without trying to string some money out of you people. So that's all this land here. But the next stop we're going to is preserved ground. Is there any other questions for Jim? Or you got one?
Is there any physical left of the fort?
Have you seen?
West
I haven't seen
Fort.
anything, but I've talked to people that have seen.
I mean,
those
remnants.
remains. Yeah, there's
Yes.
remnants.
I've been up there, and
Thank you.
according to the person that I talked to up there, is there's a house that's actually built on part of the fort.
Yeah.
And that's all I know, because going up that road, it's like going down to the Yonley house. It's one way.
Yeah, you don't. It's all private.
It's private land.
The good thing is, though, this 172 acre project and the landowner we're working with, her mom owns where West Fort is. Her sisters own where that other redoubt is. The rest of her and her sisters own all the way down to, did you guys drive past the Walmart on
Yeah.
Route 50? We have an opportunity to save 900 acres all the way down to Walmart. We can go right behind Walmart with this land. I mean, everyone thinks 3rd Winchester is impressive. That's 600 acres of preserved contiguous land. We're talking close to 900 acres right here alone on this side of Winchester, the 4th fastest growing community in the state for 4 years in a row. I think it's the fastest growing for 4 years in a row. That's it. So
Is West Fort on that far ridge there, on the other side of where there's cars are traveling, or is this little ridge right here?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
It's a common, so you see it stretches this whole, so battery 6 is more of that one that would have been directly to our front.
Okay.
But not on that rise, there's a rise behind it that's higher, but you can't see it because of trees and then the highway. And then as you move south, probably from that power pole southward, you have the cluster of what we know as West Fork.
It looks like a dip in the ground there, and it's a little conceived, misleading. It's a fairly formidable up there.
And this terrain's not perfectly flat. I mean, we're kind of teased here with the apple trees right in front of you all. But if you walk from here to there, there's so many swales and dips and ravines as these Louisiana troops are marching and charging in the wide open. I mean, Jim talked about it. It's either orchards, it's corn, it's wheat. It's nothing tall that's protecting you. The only thing that's protecting you as you're moving from this tree line all the way to that tree line is the terrain itself. If you can use the hills and the ravines, you're free from cover. But then once you get to the base of that hill, I mean, you've got obstructions, abatis, all these things that are blocking you from ascending the hill that you now have to overcome. So these same Louisiana troops that, if you were here last weekend, were charging the coaling, you know, and they had a little less obstructions, they're getting it a lot worse this time, but they finally take it just like they do at the coaling.
Now these are the shock troops,
Yeah.
the Second Corps. You know, Early sends them in, and Jackson always sent them in when he really had a dirty job to do. And like true tigers, once they took the place, they ransacked.
Yes.
They kind of stopped. They just, you know, what's left in the camp, they started ransacking the fort.
And these guys have been here the year before,
Yes.
attacking Bowers Hill.
Exactly.
Yeah, the Tiger Brigade and the Stonewall Brigade are the only two brigades who fight at all three of the battles of Winchester. So we're all
Jack?
giving tidbits right now.
Jack, are you guys going to keep the orchard in place, or are you going to take it out?
So we have no they're going to choose to do agriculturally what they see fit, but everyone knows Winchester is like the apple capital. The apple production is dying here in Winchester. That's just because it's not a money-making, farming practice. So this is more of, you can use it for like making cider or but it's not what it used to be when it came to the apple industry in Winchester. So that's why you see these big piles of trees. Those are the ripped out apple trees. They're converting to other crops that'll actually make them some sort of money. So it's up to them. We'll work with them, but
Hopefully a section or something could be maintained.
Yeah.
To kind of give the.
And some of the interpretation here, because the family that's owned this for over 100 years is one of the largest landowners in Frederick County, period. And they were huge in the rise of the apple industry and its economic, power here in Winchester. So we'll keep some here to interpret. As the industry naturally is going to die and is dying, something will be here to interpret the apple industry itself too.